Welcome to a calm journey into the hidden world beneath your feet. Here, small and steady actions quietly shape life over time. Let these gentle facts unfold as you relax and listen. Ants are among the most socially organized insects on Earth, forming colonies that function as cohesive biological systems rather than loose gatherings of individuals. Within a colony, survival depends on cooperation, repetition, and stability, with daily activity unfolding through countless small actions that support shared goals. Foraging, nest maintenance, defense, and care of developing young occur continuously, guided by instinctive behavior shaped over millions of years. No single ant oversees these processes, yet coordination remains remarkably precise. Instead of leadership, chemical communication provides structure. Subtle scent cues regulate movement, task focus, and social recognition, allowing thousands or millions of individuals to adjust behavior in response to changing conditions. When food becomes available, effort concentrates naturally. When danger appears, defensive responses spread rapidly without confusion. These shifts occur automatically, conserving energy while maintaining order. This cooperative lifestyle offers powerful evolutionary advantages. Colonies distribute risk across many individuals, ensuring that the loss of some does not threaten overall survival. Workload sharing reduces exhaustion and increases efficiency over long periods. Over evolutionary time, groups that coordinated effectively endured environmental stress more reliably than solitary insects, reinforcing social organization as a successful strategy. The colony itself behaves like a single organism composed of many parts. Individuals act as specialized units, while the collective responds as a whole. Internal harmony is preserved through recognition signals that minimize conflict and maintain cohesion in crowded spaces. Stability becomes the default state, even amid constant activity. Such organization influences physical design and behavior. Body structures favor endurance, sensory systems prioritize chemical detection, and routines emphasize persistence over speed. Through cooperation, ants thrive across diverse environments, quietly shaping ecosystems while remaining largely unseen. Their success demonstrates how simple rules, repeated endlessly, can produce resilience, balance, and continuity across generations. Across seasons and landscapes, this collective rhythm endures, adjusting gradually, absorbing disturbance, and sustaining life through patience, coordination, and time. Ants communicate primarily through chemical signals known as pheromones, which form the foundation of coordination inside a colony. These chemical messages travel through air, soil, and across surfaces, carrying information about food, danger, identity, and direction. Instead of relying on sound or visual signals, ants interpret subtle changes in scent, allowing thousands of individuals to respond almost simultaneously. This system works effectively even in complete darkness, making it ideal for underground and enclosed environments. When a valuable food source is discovered, an ant releases a pheromone trail while returning to the nest. Other ants detect this trail and follow it, reinforcing the signal as they move back and forth. Over time, efficient paths become stronger, while less useful routes fade as pheromones evaporate. In this way, the colony continuously updates its behavior without memory or planning. Decisions emerge from repetition rather than instruction. Different pheromones serve different roles. Some attract nest mates toward resources, while others warn of danger or signal alarm. Recognition pheromones help maintain colony identity, reducing conflict by distinguishing members from outsiders. There are also signals that influence task allocation, subtly guiding individuals toward foraging, nest work, or care of young based on current needs. Chemical communication allows rapid adaptation. If a food source disappears, trails weaken naturally and activity shifts elsewhere. If a threat appears, alarm signals spread quickly, triggering coordinated defense. This responsiveness helps colonies survive unpredictable conditions while conserving energy. Over evolutionary time, pheromone-based communication proved highly reliable. Colonies that exchanged information efficiently were better able to exploit resources and avoid danger. Gradual refinement strengthened this system, making chemical signaling the primary language of ants. Through invisible messages, colonies maintain order, flexibility, and balance, coordinating complex behavior through simple cues that flow constantly beneath the surface of the world. These signals operate continuously, linking individuals into a shared responsive network. Life within an underground colony depends on finely tuned division of labor that shifts with age, season, and need. Individuals progress through roles in a predictable sequence, beginning with tasks close to the brood and gradually moving outward to riskier work. Early responsibilities often include cleaning chambers, tending eggs and larvae, and maintaining humidity. As bodies harden and experience accumulates, duties expand to nest repair, food processing, and eventually foraging beyond the entrance. This progression balances safety and efficiency, protecting the most valuable members while ensuring steady output. Role changes are guided by physiology and chemical context rather than instruction. Hormonal states influence sensitivity to cues, making certain tasks more likely at particular stages. When demand rises for a job, relevant signals increase, drawing attention and effort without commands. If conditions ease, participation fades. The system reallocates labor continuously, smoothing shortages before they become crises. Seasonal rhythms also shape work patterns. During periods of abundance, more effort flows toward foraging and storage. In lean times, activity contracts, conserving energy and prioritizing care. Environmental disturbances trigger rapid rebalancing, with repair and defense briefly dominating before normal routines return. This organization reduces bottlenecks because many individuals can perform multiple tasks. The colony avoids dependence on specialists that might be lost. Redundancy provides resilience. Even when sections of the workforce are removed, remaining members compensate through flexible shifts. Over evolutionary time, colonies that managed labor fluidly persisted longer and reproduced more reliably. The result is a workforce model optimized for continuity, where risk is distributed, effort is modulated, and stability emerges from constant small adjustments. Such systems sustain long-lived communities beneath soil and stone, maintaining productivity through change. Quiet persistence allows recovery after loss, ensuring renewal without pause across years. Through countless cycles, collective balance remains intact, supported by shared effort and patience. Survival across diverse environments depends heavily on the ability to regulate internal conditions, especially temperature and humidity within living spaces. Underground chambers, tunnels, and surface structures are arranged in ways that buffer colonies from external extremes. Depth plays a key role. as lower chambers maintain more stable temperatures than the surface. In hot conditions, activity shifts downward, while cooler periods encourage movement closer to entrances. This vertical organization allows fine control without conscious planning. Airflow is managed through the positioning and maintenance of openings. Entrances may be widened, narrowed, or temporarily blocked to adjust ventilation. Increased airflow helps release excess heat, while restricted openings conserve warmth and moisture. These changes occur gradually through repeated small actions rather than deliberate design. Over time, stable internal climates are maintained even as external conditions fluctuate dramatically. Moisture control is equally important. Developing young require specific humidity levels, and structural adjustments help retain or release moisture as needed. Soil choice, chamber spacing, and tunnel orientation all influence water movement. When heavy rain threatens flooding, behavior shifts to reinforce vulnerable areas or relocate brood to safer chambers. During dry periods, deeper spaces preserve moisture. Collective clustering also contributes to regulation. Bodies grouped together generate and conserve heat during cooler conditions. In warmer periods, spacing increases to improve cooling. These patterns shift automatically, guided by local cues. Environmental regulation supports long-term stability. Colonies that maintained suitable internal conditions survived seasonal extremes more reliably. Over evolutionary time, these behaviors refined gradually, producing systems capable of enduring heat, cold, drought, and rain. Through constant minor adjustments, internal balance persists, allowing communities to function steadily beneath changing skies. This quiet regulation underpins continuity, supporting growth, reproduction, and recovery across years. Longevity within a colony depends not only on cooperation and communication, but also on how waste, disease risk, and cleanliness are managed over time. Living in dense groups creates constant exposure to debris, food remains, and biological waste, which could easily lead to illness if left unmanaged. To prevent this, colonies develop clear behavioral patterns that separate clean living spaces from contaminated areas, maintaining internal hygiene without awareness or planning. Specific zones are used for waste storage, often located far from brood chambers and food reserves. Material such as dead individuals, discarded food fragments, and other debris is transported deliberately to these areas. By isolating waste, the spread of harmful microorganisms is reduced. This spatial separation protects vulnerable members, especially developing young, from exposure to pathogens. Certain individuals are more likely to handle waste-related tasks. These roles emerge through chemical sensitivity and repeated exposure rather than assignment. Over time, those involved in waste management spend more time in peripheral areas, reducing contact with the core of the colony. This natural segregation further limits disease transmission. Cleaning behaviors extend beyond waste removal. Surfaces and brood are regularly groomed, removing parasites and contaminants. Mutual grooming also reinforces social bonds while maintaining hygiene. These actions occur continuously, creating a self-maintaining system that reduces long-term risk. If disease does appear, behavior often shifts to contain it. Affected individuals may be avoided or isolated through changes in chemical signals. In extreme cases, contact decreases automatically, limiting spread without recognition of illness. Over evolutionary time, colonies that managed hygiene effectively survived longer and reproduced more successfully. Gradual refinement of these behaviors produced systems capable of sustaining dense populations over many years. Through separation, grooming, and quiet regulation, internal health is preserved, supporting continuity, resilience, and survival across generations. Reproduction within a colony is organized in a way that prioritizes long-term continuity rather than rapid expansion. The reproductive role is concentrated in a small number of individuals whose biology is specialized for egg production. This structure allows the majority of the population to focus entirely on maintenance, foraging, and protection, while reproduction proceeds steadily in the background. By separating reproductive effort from daily labor, colonies maintain stability even under stress. The reproductive individual begins life similarly to others, but follows a different developmental path. After mating, a transition occurs that shifts physiology toward sustained egg production. Wings, when present, are discarded, signaling a permanent change in function. From that point forward, energy is devoted almost exclusively to reproduction. Support from surrounding members ensures nourishment, protection, and suitable environmental conditions. Egg production follows rhythms influenced by season, temperature, and resource availability. During favorable conditions, output increases, supporting growth. In harsher periods, reproduction slows, conserving energy. These adjustments occur gradually through chemical feedback rather than conscious control. The colony expands or contracts its reproductive effort in response to environmental signals. Genetic continuity is preserved through this system. Because reproduction is centralized, successful traits are propagated consistently. This reduces internal competition and conflict, supporting cohesion. At the same time, periodic production of reproductive offspring allows new colonies to form, spreading genetic material into new areas. Longevity plays an important role. Reproductive individuals often live far longer than others, sometimes spanning many years. This extended lifespan provides continuity across generations of workers, anchoring the colony through cycles of loss and renewal. Over evolutionary time, colonies with stable reproductive systems persisted more reliably. Gradual refinement balanced growth with endurance. Through controlled reproduction, colonies avoid collapse during scarcity while remaining capable of expansion when conditions improve. This measured approach supports survival across unpredictable environments, allowing communities to persist quietly beneath the surface for long periods without interruption. Movement and navigation across complex terrain rely on an ability to evaluate surfaces, distances, and efficiency without maps or memory. Paths form through repetition, with successful routes becoming more established over time. As individuals travel between living spaces and resources, their movement subtly reshapes the environment, smoothing soil, clearing debris, and creating channels that are easier to traverse repeatedly. These pathways are not planned, yet they emerge naturally through frequent use. Navigation depends heavily on environmental cues rather than internal mapping. Surface textures, slopes, and chemical traces combine to guide direction. When obstacles appear, exploration increases briefly, testing alternatives until a workable route emerges. Once established, repetition reinforces the new path. Inefficient options gradually disappear. As use declines, this constant adjustment allows travel networks to remain efficient even as surroundings change. Distance management also plays a role. Routes that minimize energy expenditure become favored over longer or more difficult alternatives. Over time, the shortest and safest paths dominate movement patterns. This optimization occurs without awareness, driven by repetition and feedback rather than calculation. Vertical movement introduces additional challenges. Climbing vegetation, navigating uneven ground, or moving through layered soil requires coordination and balance. Physical structure supports this, with jointed limbs providing stability on varied surfaces. Grip and flexibility allow movement across materials, ranging from loose soil to smooth plant stems. Through repeated travel, entire networks form connecting key areas. These networks improve efficiency, reduce fatigue, and support steady resource flow. Over evolutionary time, colonies that optimized movement survived more reliably, conserving energy while maintaining productivity. This quiet refinement of pathways supports endurance, allowing sustained activity across large areas without confusion, interruption, or waste. Food acquisition and processing involve a series of coordinated behaviors that transform scattered resources into usable nourishment for the entire community. Discovery often begins with exploration, as individuals move through surrounding areas, sampling potential sources. When a usable resource is found, information spreads through chemical cues, drawing additional effort to the location. This concentration of activity allows rapid collection before competitors or environmental changes intervene. Once gathered, material is rarely consumed immediately at the source. Transport back to living spaces enables processing, storage, and redistribution. Some food is broken down into smaller portions, while liquids may be shared directly through mouth-to-mouth transfer. This exchange ensures that nourishment reaches individuals that remain inside, including those responsible for care and maintenance. Distribution reduces inequality and supports continuous operation. Storage plays a critical role during periods of scarcity. Certain chambers or individuals retain reserves that can be accessed later. These stores buffer against unpredictable conditions, smoothing fluctuations in availability. When resources are abundant, storage increases. When scarce, consumption slows. This balance is maintained through chemical feedback rather than planning. Processing methods vary by diet. Solid material may be fragmented, softened, or combined with secretions to improve digestibility. In some systems, food supports secondary growth that later becomes nourishment. These transformations expand usable resources beyond their original form, increasing efficiency. Competition influences strategy. Speed, cooperation, and timing determine success when resources are contested. Concentrated effort allows rapid removal, reducing loss. Retreat occurs when cost outweighs benefit, conserving energy. Over time, communities that managed acquisition and distribution effectively survived more consistently. Gradual refinement improved efficiency, reduced waste, and stabilized supply. Through exploration, processing, storage, and sharing, nourishment supports continuity across seasons, allowing sustained activity despite environmental uncertainty. Defense within a colony relies on collective awareness and rapid coordination rather than individual strength. Threats can come from predators, competing colonies, parasites, or sudden environmental disturbances. When danger approaches, chemical alarm signals spread quickly, changing behavior across nearby individuals within moments. This immediate shift allows a coordinated response to emerge without confusion or delay. Different defensive strategies appear depending on the nature of the threat. Against small intruders, numbers overwhelm. Multiple individuals converge, biting, restraining, or driving the threat away through repeated contact. Against larger predators, behavior may focus on deterrence, using stings, secretions, or aggressive displays to discourage further approach. These actions are not planned responses, but instinctive patterns shaped by long evolutionary history. Spatial organization plays an important role. Entrances and tunnels act as choke points, limiting access and allowing concentrated defense. Individuals closer to the exterior respond first, reducing risk to vulnerable members deeper inside. This layered structure protects developing young and reproductive individuals by absorbing danger at the perimeter. Chemical recognition helps prevent internal conflict during defense. Members identify one another through scent, maintaining coordination even in crowded or chaotic conditions. Outsiders lacking proper signals are targeted automatically. This recognition preserves internal cohesion while excluding threats. Energy management influences defensive behavior. Engagement intensifies when risk is high and recedes when danger passes. Prolonged conflict is avoided when possible, conserving resources for survival. If a location becomes too costly to defend, relocation may occur, preserving the colony rather than territory. Over evolutionary time, communities that coordinated defense effectively endured longer and reproduced more reliably. Gradual refinement improved responsiveness and reduced loss. Through shared awareness and collective action, colonies maintain security across unpredictable environments, absorbing threats without collapse, and sustaining continuity through cooperation, repetition, and resilience over extended periods. Interaction with the surrounding ecosystem extends far beyond simple survival, influencing soil quality, plant growth, and the distribution of nutrients over long periods. Continuous digging, movement, and material transport gradually alter the physical structure of the ground. As tunnels form and expand, air and water move more freely through soil layers, improving conditions for roots and microorganisms. These changes accumulate slowly, but their effects can be widespread and long-lasting. Material carried into and out of living spaces contributes to nutrient cycling. Organic debris, food remnants, and waste are relocated from one area to another, redistributing minerals and organic matter. This movement enriches soil in some places while loosening compacted areas in others. Over time, ground becomes more fertile and better able to support vegetation. Plants growing near long-established colonies often benefit from improved access to nutrients and water. Relationships with other organisms also shape ecosystems. Some interactions are cooperative, where protection or movement is exchanged for nourishment. Others are competitive, influencing population balance among insects and plants. These interactions help regulate species abundance, preventing any single group from dominating completely. Balance emerges through countless small exchanges rather than dramatic events. Disturbance plays a role as well. Soil turnover exposes buried material to surface conditions, accelerating decomposition. Seeds may be relocated, altering plant distribution. Microbial communities shift in response to new airflow and moisture patterns. These subtle effects ripple outward, influencing broader ecological processes. Over long time scales, such activity positions colonies as ecosystem engineers. Without intention or awareness, daily routines reshape landscapes. Through persistence rather than force, small actions repeated endlessly transform environments. This influence remains largely unseen, yet it supports biodiversity, soil health, and ecological stability across regions. By interacting continuously with their surroundings, colonies become integral components of the systems they inhabit, sustaining balance through quiet, ongoing modification. Adaptation to change depends on the ability to adjust behavior based on experience without relying on memory in the human sense. Repeated exposure to similar conditions gradually alters responses, producing patterns that appear learned, even though they emerge from simple feedback. When a route consistently leads to nourishment, traffic increases along it. When danger repeatedly appears in a location, avoidance grows stronger. These shifts reflect accumulated outcomes rather than conscious recall. Experience shapes sensitivity to signals. Chemical cues associated with success become more influential, while those linked to failure lose effect. Over time, this tuning refines behavior, improving efficiency and safety. The process resembles learning, yet it operates through reinforcement rather than awareness. Repetition strengthens useful responses and weakens unproductive ones. Environmental variability accelerates this refinement. Changing weather, fluctuating resources, and shifting terrain present constant challenges. Flexible response patterns allow adjustment without redesign. Exploration increases briefly when conditions change, testing alternatives. Once stability returns, behavior settles into efficient routines. This balance between exploration and exploitation conserves energy while maintaining readiness. Social context amplifies adaptation. Because many individuals experience similar conditions, successful responses spread rapidly through shared cues. Ineffective strategies fade as participation declines. This collective filtering produces reliable outcomes faster than individual trial alone. Group experience becomes embedded in routine. Physiology supports adaptability. Sensitivity to cues can change with age or role, aligning responses with current needs. Younger individuals may react differently than older ones, distributing experience across tasks. This diversity prevents rigidity and supports resilience. Across generations, adaptive behaviors persist through selection. Colonies that adjusted effectively survived longer and reproduced more reliably. Gradual refinement embedded flexibility into everyday activity. Through feedback, repetition, and shared context, behavior remains responsive without requiring memory, allowing steady performance amid uncertainty. This quiet adaptability supports continuity across seasons, disturbances, and time. Seasonal rhythms shape activity patterns in complex ways, influencing movement, reproduction, and energy use across the year. Temperature, moisture, and daylight length alter external conditions, requiring flexible internal responses to maintain stability. During warm periods with abundant resources, activity increases, foraging expands, construction accelerates, and growth is supported. In cooler or drier times, effort contracts, conserving energy and reducing exposure to risk. Timing adjustments occur gradually rather than abruptly. Daily cycles shift first, with work concentrated during favorable hours. As conditions change further, broader seasonal patterns emerge. Some tasks slow or pause, while maintenance and care continue at a reduced pace. These transitions are guided by environmental cues interacting with internal chemical signals, producing coordinated change without planning. Resource management adapts alongside activity. Storage becomes more important when availability fluctuates. Accumulated reserves buffer shortages, smoothing supply across lean periods. Consumption patterns adjust automatically, reducing waste and extending endurance. When abundance returns, effort redistributes toward collection and processing, replenishing stores. Reproductive timing also reflects seasonal context. Output increases when conditions favor survival and decreases when risk rises. This modulation prevents overextension and reduces loss. Developmental rates respond similarly, slowing or accelerating based on temperature and nutrition. These changes protect investment in future generations. Structural behavior shifts as well. Living spaces may be reinforced before adverse weather, entrances modified, and internal arrangements altered to improve insulation or ventilation. Clustering behavior increases during cooler conditions, conserving heat, while spacing expands when cooling is needed. These responses occur through local interactions, not centralized control. Seasonal flexibility enhances resilience. Communities that matched effort to conditions avoided collapse during extremes. Over evolutionary time, gradual refinement aligned internal rhythms with external cycles. Through careful modulation of work, storage, and reproduction, continuity is maintained across years, allowing persistence despite unpredictable change. Such alignment reduces stress on individuals, spreads risk, and preserves energy for recovery after hardship, ensuring long-term stability. Population balance within a colony is maintained through continuous adjustment rather than fixed limits. Numbers fluctuate in response to available space, resources, and environmental pressure. Growth occurs when conditions are favorable, while contraction follows periods of scarcity or disturbance. These changes are not directed decisions, but emerge from interactions between reproduction, survival rates, and workload distribution. When resources are plentiful, survival of developing young increases, allowing population size to expand. More individuals contribute to foraging, construction, and defense, reinforcing growth. As density rises, internal conditions change. Space becomes more crowded, competition for tasks increases, and chemical signals shift. These changes naturally slow further expansion by reducing reproductive output or increasing mortality at early stages. Resource scarcity produces the opposite effect. Reduced food availability lowers survival rates among developing individuals and may shorten adult lifespans. Activity contracts, conserving energy. Population size declines gradually until balance is restored. This self-regulating process prevents sudden collapse while avoiding unsustainable growth. Workload distribution plays a key role. When too few individuals perform critical tasks, signals intensify, drawing effort where needed. When too many are present, participation spreads thinly, lowering individual strain, but also reducing efficiency. Balance emerges through feedback rather than planning. Environmental disturbances, such as flooding, heat, or competition, accelerate adjustment. Losses occur, but recovery follows if conditions improve. Because reproduction is continuous yet modulated, rebuilding happens steadily without overshoot. Over evolutionary time, colonies that regulated population size effectively persisted longer. Gradual refinement aligned growth with capacity, reducing risk of exhaustion or starvation. Through feedback between resources, space, and survival, population balance remains dynamic yet stable. This flexibility supports endurance across changing environments, allowing communities to absorb loss, recover steadily, and continue functioning across seasons and years without reaching extremes that threaten continuity. Expansion into new areas occurs through a gradual process that balances opportunity with risk. When existing living spaces become crowded or resources nearby decline, exploratory behavior increases at the edges of activity. Individuals begin moving farther from established areas, sampling new ground and testing conditions. This exploration does not guarantee settlement, but it gathers information that influences future movement patterns. If conditions prove favorable, repeated visits reinforce pathways. Over time, these routes become stable connections linking old and new areas. Activity increases along them, and effort shifts outward. In some cases, portions of the population relocate permanently, establishing additional living spaces while maintaining connection to the original site. This process spreads presence without abandoning stability. Environmental factors strongly influence expansion success. Soil quality, moisture, temperature, and availability of food determine whether new areas can support sustained activity. Competition from other colonies also shapes outcomes. If resistance is high, retreat occurs, conserving energy. If resistance is low, settlement proceeds gradually. This selective approach prevents wasteful overextension. Reproductive timing often aligns with expansion. New reproductive individuals may be produced when conditions allow, supporting the formation of additional communities. Dispersal reduces crowding and spreads genetic material across the landscape. However, not all dispersal attempts succeed. Many fail, reinforcing cautious expansion as a safer long-term strategy. Internal organization adapts during growth. Work allocation shifts to support construction and defense at new sites. Chemical communication maintains coordination across extended networks. If conditions change, effort can retract, preserving the core. Over evolutionary time, gradual expansion proved more reliable than rapid spread. Colonies that tested environments before committing survived longer and reproduced more successfully. Through careful probing, reinforcement, and adjustment, presence spread steadily without destabilizing existing systems. This measured approach allows adaptation to changing landscapes, supporting continuity across generations while avoiding collapse from overreach. Long-term survival depends heavily on the ability to recover after loss, disturbance, or partial collapse. Environmental events such as flooding, heat waves, drought, predation, or human activity can remove large portions of a community in a short time. Despite this, recovery often occurs without panic or disorganization. Remaining individuals continue routine behaviors, allowing rebuilding to emerge gradually through repetition and persistence. Recovery begins with stabilization. Effort concentrates on maintaining essential functions such as care, shelter maintenance, and protection. Activity that is not immediately necessary slows, conserving energy. Chemical signals shift priorities, directing attention toward repair and support rather than expansion. This redistribution happens automatically without assessment or planning. Rebuilding follows predictable patterns. As conditions improve, reproduction increases, and survival rates among developing individuals rise. Gradual population growth restores workforce capacity. Construction resumes, damaged structures are reinforced, and movement networks are repaired. Because tasks are distributed and flexible, recovery does not depend on specific individuals. Loss of some members does not prevent progress. Redundancy plays a critical role. Many individuals can perform similar tasks, preventing bottlenecks during rebuilding. Experience is embedded in behavior patterns rather than memory, allowing routines to resume quickly. Environmental cues guide effort toward areas most in need, accelerating stabilization. Relocation may occur if damage is severe. Instead of rebuilding in a high-risk area, movement shifts towards safer locations. This decision emerges from repeated avoidance rather than intention. Gradual retreat preserves resources while maintaining continuity. Over evolutionary time, communities that recovered effectively persisted longer. Gradual refinement favored systems that absorbed loss without collapse. Through stabilization, redistribution of effort, and patient rebuilding, continuity is preserved. Recovery does not restore previous states immediately, but it reestablishes function steadily. This resilience allows survival across unpredictable conditions, supporting endurance over years and generations through quiet persistence rather than rapid response. Interactions with plant life shape many daily activities and influence broader ecosystem dynamics over long periods. Through movement, feeding, and nesting behavior, relationships form that affect growth patterns, reproduction, and survival of vegetation. Some interactions are indirect, such as soil modification, improving root access to air and water. Others involve more direct exchanges that influence how plants allocate resources and defend themselves. Movement through vegetation redistributes seeds and pollen. As individuals travel across stems, leaves, and ground surfaces, seeds may be carried short distances before being dropped elsewhere. This relocation changes where plants grow, increasing spread and genetic mixing. Over time, such movement alters plant distribution patterns across landscapes, supporting diversity and resilience. Certain relationships involve exchange rather than incidental contact. Protection may be provided in return for nourishment, creating mutual benefit. Plants gain defense against herbivores, while nourishment supports continued activity. These interactions persist because both sides benefit. If conditions change and benefit declines, participation naturally fades. No obligation maintains the relationship beyond usefulness. Nesting behavior also influences vegetation. Construction near roots can alter soil composition, affecting water retention and nutrient flow. Some plants benefit from improved conditions, while others may be displaced. These changes occur gradually, reshaping plant communities through persistent pressure rather than sudden disruption. Seasonal changes affect interaction intensity. During growth periods, contact increases as vegetation provides shelter and resources. In dormant periods, interaction declines. This rhythm aligns plant cycles with surrounding activity, creating synchronized patterns across ecosystems. Over evolutionary time, plant species that tolerated or benefited from these interactions persisted more successfully. Likewise, communities adapted to local vegetation thrived where resources remained reliable. Through constant interaction, landscapes are shaped collaboratively. The result is an environment molded by repeated small exchanges where plant life and insect activity influence one another continuously, supporting balance, diversity, and long-term stability across regions. Competition with neighboring communities influences behavior boundaries and long-term survival strategies. When multiple groups rely on overlapping resources, encounters become more frequent, shaping movement patterns and defensive readiness. These interactions do not always result in conflict. Sometimes avoidance emerges instead, with activity shifting subtly to reduce costly encounters. Over time, informal boundaries form through repeated contact, minimizing energy loss. When confrontation does occur, responses depend on context, resource value, relative numbers, and environmental conditions all influence intensity. Short encounters may resolve quickly through displays or chemical deterrents, discouraging escalation. In other cases, prolonged engagement happens when valuable resources are at stake. Even then, effort is regulated to prevent excessive loss, conserving strength for future challenges. Chemical recognition plays a central role in distinguishing neighbors from outsiders. Familiar scents may trigger reduced aggression, while unfamiliar cues prompt defensive behavior. This discrimination helps stabilize local interactions, preventing constant conflict. Over time, tolerance can develop between nearby groups, allowing coexistence when competition is balanced. Territorial behavior emerges through repetition rather than mapping. Frequently traveled routes become associated with presence, while intrusion triggers response. As conditions change, boundaries shift. If resources decline in one area, movement retracts naturally, reducing overlap. When abundance increases, expansion resumes cautiously. Energy management remains critical. Sustained conflict drains resources and reduces productivity. Groups that avoided unnecessary confrontation survived more reliably. Selection favored strategies that balanced defense with restraint, preserving capacity for recovery and growth. Across generations, these competitive dynamics shaped behavior patterns that emphasize flexibility and feedback. Boundaries remain fluid, aggression proportional, and coexistence possible. Through continuous adjustment rather than rigid control, communities persist within shared landscapes, navigating competition through measured response, adaptation, and endurance, rather than dominance alone. Care of developing young represents one of the most sensitive and energy-intensive responsibilities within a colony, requiring stable conditions and constant attention. Eggs, larvae, and pupae differ greatly in their needs, and each stage receives specific forms of care that support healthy development. Environmental stability, nutrition, and protection all converge around these early life stages, making brood care central to long-term continuity. Young are housed in carefully selected chambers where temperature and humidity remain within narrow ranges. When conditions shift, relocation occurs gradually, moving brood to more suitable areas. This movement responds to local cues rather than planning. Gentle handling prevents damage, and repeated checks ensure developing individuals remain within optimal conditions. Such adjustments happen continuously, adapting to daily and seasonal variation. Nutrition plays a critical role. Developing individuals cannot feed themselves, relying instead on processed nourishment delivered by caretakers. Food quality and quantity influence growth rates and survival. During scarcity, allocation becomes more selective, prioritizing those most likely to survive. This regulation balances investment against available resources, preventing exhaustion of reserves. Protection is equally important. Vulnerable stages are shielded from physical disturbance and potential threats. Defensive behavior intensifies near brood chambers, while access routes remain controlled. If danger approaches, relocation occurs automatically, moving young away from risk zones. Care roles are often performed by individuals in earlier life stages, whose proximity to the brood reduces exposure to external danger. As they age, roles shift outward. This progression protects developing individuals while distributing risk logically. Over evolutionary time, communities that refined brood care survived longer and reproduced more reliably. Gradual improvements reduced loss during early development. Through constant adjustment, careful handling, and environmental regulation, continuity is preserved. Brood care anchors the future, ensuring renewal across generations through steady patient attention. Longevity and aging within a colony follow patterns that differ greatly from solitary insects, shaped by role, environment, and exposure to risk. Lifespan varies widely, depending on the tasks performed during life. Individuals that remain within protected internal spaces often live significantly longer than those regularly exposed to hazards outside. This variation allows communities to allocate risk strategically, preserving continuity while maintaining productivity. Early life stages are typically spent in safer areas, focused on maintenance and care. These roles reduce exposure to predators, extreme temperatures, and competition. As individuals age, movement gradually shifts outward toward tasks that involve higher risk, such as exploration and resource collection. This progression ensures that those most valuable to future continuity are shielded during vulnerable periods. Environmental conditions strongly influence lifespan. Stable temperature, adequate nutrition, and low disturbance increase survival. Stressors such as drought, flooding, or competition reduce longevity. Internal regulation helps buffer these effects, but exposure still shapes outcomes. Through flexible role assignment, risk is distributed across the population rather than concentrated. Physiology adapts to role demands. Musculature, sensory sensitivity, and energy allocation shift with task focus. This specialization supports endurance where needed and strength where required. Aging does not follow a uniform decline, but reflects accumulated exposure and effort. Some individuals remain functional for extended periods, while others complete their role more quickly. Reproductive individuals often live far longer than others, anchoring continuity across generations. Their protected position and consistent care support extended lifespan. This disparity stabilizes population cycles, allowing turnover among workers without disrupting reproduction. Over evolutionary time, colonies that balanced lifespan with task distribution survived more reliably. Gradual refinement aligned aging patterns with collective needs. Through role progression, protection of key individuals, and adaptive exposure to risk, communities maintain stability. Longevity becomes a collective property rather than an individual trait, supporting endurance across seasons, disturbances, and time through coordinated aging and renewal. Energy use within a colony is regulated through continuous adjustment rather than fixed schedules, allowing effort to expand or contract in response to conditions. Daily activity follows environmental cues such as temperature, moisture, and resource availability. When conditions favor movement and collection, activity increases steadily. When conditions become costly or dangerous, effort recedes, conserving energy and reducing exposure. This modulation happens automatically through local signals rather than centralized control. Metabolic demands vary by task. Activities involving exploration and transport require more energy than maintenance or care roles. By distributing these tasks across different individuals and times, overall expenditure remains balanced. Rest periods are not coordinated events but emerge naturally as participation shifts. At any moment, some individuals are active, while others remain relatively still, smoothing total demand. Resource flow influences energy allocation. Abundant nourishment supports higher activity levels, while scarcity triggers restraint. Chemical cues reflecting nutritional status alter sensitivity to work-related signals, reducing participation when reserves fall. This feedback prevents exhaustion and preserves capacity for recovery. When supply improves, effort rises again without delay. Thermal regulation also affects energy use. Cooler conditions reduce metabolic rate and movement, conserving resources. Warmer conditions increase activity but also raise risk of overheating. Behavioral spacing, timing shifts, and movement to suitable microclimates help balance these effects, maintaining efficiency. Collective efficiency benefits from redundancy. Because many individuals can perform similar tasks, effort redistributes easily. Loss or fatigue of some does not halt progress. This flexibility prevents energy bottlenecks and supports continuity. Over evolutionary time, communities that regulated energy effectively persisted longer. Gradual refinement favored systems that matched effort to return, minimizing waste while sustaining productivity. Through constant adjustment of activity timing and task distribution, energy supports long-term survival. This balance allows communities to endure fluctuating conditions, maintaining steady function across days, seasons, and years through measured use rather than continuous strain. Thermal tolerance and response are shaped by the need to remain active across a wide range of temperatures while avoiding damage from extremes. Behavior adjusts continuously as local conditions change, favoring microclimates that support efficient movement and physiological stability. Shade, depth, moisture, and airflow become critical variables, guiding where activity concentrates at different times of day. By shifting position rather than physiology alone, exposure to harmful temperatures is reduced. Daily cycles illustrate this adjustment clearly. Activity often increases during cooler hours and contracts during heat peaks, even when resources remain available. This timing minimizes water loss and overheating while maintaining productivity. When temperatures fall too low, movement slows, conserving energy until conditions improve. These transitions occur through local cues, not schedules, allowing fine-grained response to brief fluctuations. Structural features of living spaces contribute to thermal buffering. Deeper chambers maintain more stable temperatures than surface areas, providing refuge during extremes. Entrances and passageways influence airflow, helping dissipate heat or retain warmth as needed. Minor modifications, clearing, blocking, or opening, alter internal conditions gradually, supporting comfort without abrupt change. Physiological tolerance varies among individuals and roles. Those exposed more frequently develop greater resilience to heat or cold, while protected roles remain buffered. This distribution spreads risk and maintains function. When extremes persist, activity reallocates towards safer zones, reducing loss. Thermal stress also interacts with hydration. Moisture availability affects tolerance, and behavior adjusts to maintain balance. Movement toward humid microhabitats reduces dehydration risk during heat, while drier spaces may be favored in cool conditions to prevent condensation and chilling. Across evolutionary time, communities that aligned behavior with temperature persisted more reliably. Gradual refinement favored flexible response over fixed thresholds. Through timing shifts, spatial adjustment, and structural buffering, thermal challenges are absorbed without collapse. This responsiveness sustains continuity, allowing steady function across changing climates by matching activity to conditions moment by moment. Orientation within complex environments depends on combining multiple cues that together provide reliable guidance without reliance on internal maps. Direction is inferred from chemical traces, surface textures, slopes, and environmental gradients. As individuals move, these cues reinforce one another, reducing error. When one cue becomes unreliable, others compensate, maintaining continuity of movement across changing terrain. Surface texture offers important information. Smoothness, resistance, and vibration differ between frequently traveled routes and unexplored areas. Repetition alters surfaces, subtly smoothing paths and increasing traction. These changes make established routes easier to follow and less costly to traverse. Over time, physical feedback complements chemical traces, strengthening orientation even when scents fade. Slopes and gravity also contribute. Movement patterns adjust to incline, favoring routes that minimize energy expenditure. Downward paths are used differently from upward ones, and repeated success reinforces preference. This sensitivity helps maintain efficient circulation between living spaces and resources, especially in uneven environments. Environmental gradients such as moisture and airflow provide additional context. Shifts in humidity indicate depth or proximity to entrances. Air movement suggests openings or cavities. By responding to these gradients, navigation remains accurate even when visual information is absent. These cues are stable enough to guide movement reliably over time. Error correction occurs through brief exploration. When a route becomes blocked or altered, movement diversifies temporarily. Multiple alternatives are tested, and the most efficient option gains reinforcement. Less effective routes fade as participation declines. This trial process resolves disruption without confusion or delay. Collectively, these mechanisms produce robust orientation. No single cue is essential. Reliability emerges from combination and repetition. Over evolutionary time, systems that integrated multiple signals persisted longer, maintaining efficiency despite environmental change. Through layered guidance rather than precise mapping, orientation remains flexible and resilient, supporting sustained activity across varied landscapes and conditions. Structural flexibility allows living spaces to change gradually as needs shift. Tunnels may widen with increased traffic, while rarely used passages slowly collapse or are repurposed. Chambers expand when population grows and contract when numbers decline. This constant remodeling happens through repeated small actions rather than large construction efforts. Material is added, removed, or rearranged piece by piece, responding to local conditions such as moisture, crowding, or temperature. Because no permanent layout exists, damage from environmental disturbance can be repaired without restoring an exact previous form. This flexibility reduces vulnerability to collapse and allows continued function during rebuilding. Over time, living spaces reflect current needs rather than historical design, supporting long-term stability through adaptability rather than rigidity. Timing of activity across a day follows environmental cues more closely than internal schedules. Light, temperature, and humidity influence when movement increases or decreases. In hot conditions, activity often shifts toward cooler hours, while moderate temperatures allow longer periods of work. These changes reduce energy loss and prevent overheating. Timing patterns are not uniform across all individuals. Some remain active while others rest, smoothing overall effort. This staggered participation maintains productivity without exhausting the population. When conditions change suddenly, timing adjusts quickly through shared cues rather than instruction. Such responsiveness allows efficient use of short favorable windows, supporting survival in environments where conditions fluctuate daily. Crowding influences behavior in subtle but important ways. As density increases, movement patterns adjust to reduce congestion and conflict. Signals related to proximity become more prominent, guiding spacing and interaction. When crowding persists, expansion or redistribution of activity may follow, easing pressure on internal spaces. Conversely, low density encourages consolidation, drawing activity inward to maintain cohesion. These adjustments prevent instability caused by overcrowding or fragmentation. Balance emerges through local interaction rather than global assessment. Over time, density-sensitive behavior supports efficient use of space, reducing stress on individuals while preserving coordination across the group. Interaction with microorganisms plays an important role in maintaining internal conditions. Soil bacteria and fungi influence nutrient availability, decomposition, and disease risk. Through movement and waste handling, microbial communities are reshaped continuously. Beneficial microorganisms may thrive in certain chambers, while harmful growth is limited through separation and grooming behaviors. Environmental conditions such as moisture and airflow influence which microbes persist. These relationships develop without awareness, guided by repeated exposure and survival outcomes. Over long periods, communities form that support nutrient recycling and internal stability. Managing microbial balance indirectly contributes to health, reducing the likelihood of widespread illness in dense populations. Learning-like behavior emerges through reinforcement rather than memory. When certain actions consistently lead to positive outcomes, participation increases. When actions produce negative results, they gradually disappear. This process creates patterns that appear deliberate, even though no individual recalls past events. Collective repetition embeds experience into routine. Because many individuals participate, effective responses spread quickly, while ineffective ones fade. This shared filtering improves efficiency without requiring cognition. Environmental change accelerates this process, briefly increasing exploration before stable patterns re-emerge. Over time, behavior reflects accumulated outcomes, allowing steady improvement across generations without conscious learning. Hydration management is critical for maintaining activity and preventing stress. Moisture availability affects movement, metabolism, and tolerance to heat. Behavior adjusts to maintain balance, with activity shifting toward humid areas during dry conditions. Living spaces may be modified to retain moisture, while movement reduces exposure during dehydration risk. When water becomes abundant, activity expands again. These adjustments occur continuously through local cues rather than planning. Maintaining hydration balance supports endurance, allowing sustained activity even in challenging environments. Over time, such regulation reduces mortality and preserves productivity during extended dry periods. Risk distribution ensures that loss does not concentrate in critical roles. Tasks involving higher danger are spread across many individuals rather than assigned permanently. As exposure accumulates, roles shift, allowing recovery and reducing burnout. This rotation prevents catastrophic loss from sudden threats. Vulnerable stages remain protected, while expendable effort absorbs risk. Such distribution stabilizes survival rates across the population. Over evolutionary time, systems that spread risk survived more reliably. This approach treats loss as manageable rather than exceptional, allowing continuity despite constant environmental challenges. Chemical recognition maintains social boundaries and reduces internal conflict. Subtle differences in scent identify group membership, guiding interaction automatically. Familiar signals promote cooperation, while unfamiliar ones trigger avoidance or defense. This discrimination prevents infiltration and reduces wasted effort. Recognition adjusts slowly with environmental exposure, allowing tolerance where beneficial. These mechanisms operate continuously, maintaining cohesion in crowded conditions. Over time, reliable recognition supports stability, preventing internal disruption and preserving coordinated behavior. Energy conservation depends on knowing when not to act. Periods of inactivity are as important as movement, allowing recovery and preventing depletion. Stillness emerges naturally when cues indicate low return on effort. This restraint preserves capacity for future demand. When conditions improve, activity resumes smoothly without delay. Such pacing supports endurance, preventing collapse during prolonged scarcity. Over long periods, careful modulation of effort improves survival more effectively than constant work. Environmental disturbance often reshapes behavior more than structure. Flooding, heat, or intrusion alter movement patterns first, redirecting effort away from damaged areas. Structural repair follows gradually as conditions stabilize. This sequence prevents wasted effort during ongoing risk. Flexibility allows quick adjustment, preserving function even when physical spaces change. Over time, repeated disturbance refines responsiveness, improving recovery speed and reducing loss. Population renewal depends on balancing loss with replacement. Continuous reproduction allows steady turnover, while controlled growth prevents overextension. When mortality rises, output increases gradually. When survival improves, growth slows. This balance maintains stability across fluctuating conditions. Because adjustment is gradual, sudden crashes are avoided. Over evolutionary time, such regulation supported long-lived communities capable of absorbing disturbance without collapse. Long-term persistence arises from accumulation of small advantages rather than dramatic traits. Slight improvements in efficiency, coordination, or tolerance compound across generations. No single behavior guarantees success. Instead, resilience emerges from many modest adjustments working together. Through patience, repetition, and feedback, stability strengthens over time. This gradual refinement allows survival across diverse environments, supporting continuity through change. Behavior related to sound and vibration sensitivity plays a subtle role in awareness of surroundings. Movements through soil, plant matter, or structures create vibrations that travel farther than visual cues in dark environments. Sensitivity to these signals allows early detection of approaching animals, rainfall, or collapsing material. Responses adjust accordingly, with movement slowing, stopping, or redirecting. This awareness reduces sudden loss and supports timely adjustment. Over time, repeated exposure tunes responsiveness, improving discrimination between harmless background vibration and genuine disturbance. Patterns of rest emerge naturally through alternating periods of activity and stillness. Continuous work is avoided because it leads to exhaustion and inefficiency. Instead, participation shifts gradually, allowing some individuals to recover while others remain active. This staggered rhythm maintains productivity without synchronized rest. Environmental cues influence pacing, increasing stillness during unfavorable conditions. Such regulation preserves energy reserves and supports long-term endurance rather than short-term output. Interaction with temperature gradients influences positioning within living spaces. Slight differences in warmth guide movement, concentrating activity where conditions support efficiency. Developing young are often positioned within narrow thermal ranges, while storage and maintenance occupy less sensitive zones. These arrangements shift gradually as conditions change. By following gradients rather than fixed locations, internal organization remains flexible and responsive. Food preference can change with availability and nutritional need. When certain resources decline, alternative sources become more attractive through increased exploration. Over time, repeated success alters participation, shifting reliance without disruption. This adaptability prevents dependence on single resources and reduces vulnerability during scarcity. Diversity in intake supports resilience across changing environments. Surface maintenance emerges through repeated passage. Frequent movement clears debris, compresses soil, and stabilizes roots. These physical changes reduce travel cost and improve safety. Maintenance requires no dedicated effort. It occurs as a byproduct of use. Over time, reliable corridors form, supporting efficient circulation and reducing error. Response to light varies by context. While many environments are dark, exposure near entrances influences timing and direction. Bright conditions may reduce activity to avoid heat or predation, while low light encourages movement. Sensitivity to contrast rather than detail guides adjustment. These responses fine-tune exposure without reliance on vision. Population turnover contributes to stability by preventing accumulation of fatigue. Loss is balanced by gradual replacement, maintaining capacity without overcrowding. Because roles are flexible, newcomers integrate smoothly. Turnover spreads workload across generations, reducing long-term strain. This cycle supports continuity through renewal rather than preservation of individuals. Moisture gradients guide both construction and movement. Excess water triggers avoidance or reinforcement, while dryness encourages relocation toward humid zones. Structural adjustments follow repeated exposure, reshaping spaces to manage flow. These responses reduce risk of flooding or dehydration. Over time, internal conditions remain within tolerable ranges, despite external fluctuation. Exploration remains limited and purposeful. Rather than constant wandering, brief increases occur when familiar routes fail. Once alternatives succeed, exploration subsides. This restraint conserves energy while maintaining adaptability. Successful strategies spread through repetition, embedding change into routine without chaos. Social spacing adjusts automatically. Proximity increases during protection or warmth needs and expands during cooling or crowding. These shifts reduce stress and conflict. No fixed distance is maintained. Spacing responds to local conditions. Such modulation supports comfort and coordination in dense environments. Chemical diversity within signals allows nuanced response. Slight variations convey intensity, urgency, or context. This richness enables graded reaction rather than binary behavior. Responses scale smoothly with need, preventing overreaction. Over time, sensitivity refines, improving efficiency and stability. Environmental memory persists indirectly through altered structures and routes. Past events shape present behavior via changed conditions rather than recall. Rebuilt spaces reflect previous disturbance, guiding future movement. This embedded memory reduces repeated loss and improves resilience without cognition. Interaction with predators shapes caution and timing. Activity patterns adjust after encounters, favoring safer periods or routes. Over time, interaction with predators shapes caution and timing. Activity patterns adjust after encounters, favoring safer periods or routes. Over time, risk-prone behaviors decline, while safer alternatives dominate. This adaptation occurs gradually through reinforcement, improving survival without planning. Nutrient redistribution supports surrounding life. Transported material enriches soil patches, influencing plant growth patterns. These changes persist beyond individual lifespans, altering ecosystems. Through constant movement, fertility spreads unevenly, supporting diversity and stability. Collective behavior dampens extremes. Rapid spikes in activity or decline are smoothed by distributed response. This moderation prevents collapse during sudden change. Gradual adjustment preserves function across disturbance, supporting endurance rather than peak performance. Long-term success depends on accumulation of many small efficiencies. No single behavior dominates. Instead, resilience emerges from interaction among many modest advantages. Through repetition and feedback, systems refine slowly. This steady improvement supports persistence across time, allowing survival through patience rather than force. Long periods of environmental stability allow routines to become refined and energy use to settle into efficient patterns. When surroundings remain predictable, movement paths, task focus, and timing gradually align with conditions that produce the best return. Exploration becomes less frequent, not because adaptability disappears, but because existing behaviors consistently succeed. Repetition strengthens reliability, smoothing effort across time and reducing unnecessary variation. This calm rhythm lowers stress and prevents waste, supporting continuous operation with minimal disruption. Even during such stability, sensitivity to change remains present, ensuring readiness. This balance between routine efficiency and latent flexibility supports endurance across extended calm periods. Spatial layout adapts continuously through use rather than design. Areas that experience frequent movement expand and stabilize, while rarely used passages slowly narrow or disappear. This passive restructuring reduces maintenance effort and improves navigation. Because change happens gradually, disruption is minimal and easily absorbed. Damage from disturbance does not require exact restoration. Instead, structure reshapes itself to current needs. Over time, living spaces reflect present conditions rather than past configurations, allowing environments to remain efficient, relevant, and resilient without fixed plans. Energy expenditure adjusts naturally according to return. When effort yields limited benefit, participation declines without instruction. This restraint prevents exhaustion during low reward periods and preserves reserves. When conditions improve, activity rises smoothly without delay. Such feedback ensures energy supports survival rather than being wasted. Over long spans, matching effort to outcome preserves capacity, favoring endurance and persistence through scarcity, while maintaining readiness for opportunity. Behavioral diversity within groups reduces vulnerability to sudden change. Different individuals respond in varied ways to the same cues, creating a range of actions. Some conserve energy while others explore, preventing uniform failure. This diversity acts as insurance against unpredictable conditions. When one approach fails, another may succeed, allowing recovery. Over time, successful responses gain reinforcement while ineffective ones fade. Variation balances adaptability and caution, stabilizing function and reducing risk from synchronized error. Airflow sensitivity influences positioning within living spaces. Subtle currents signal entrances, depth, or open areas, guiding movement toward favorable conditions. These cues help regulate temperature and moisture without measurement. Structural features gradually reinforce beneficial airflow patterns, improving comfort and efficiency. This passive responsiveness supports internal balance, especially during thermal extremes, maintaining stable conditions through local interaction rather than deliberate control. Gradual wear influences role transitions over time. Repetitive strain alters capacity, prompting shifts toward lower-risk tasks. This redistribution preserves function while reducing sudden loss. Contribution changes smoothly instead of ending abruptly, extending usefulness. Such pacing balances productivity with preservation, reducing catastrophic depletion and supporting continuity across long periods. Environmental memory persists through altered terrain rather than recall. Reinforced routes, modified chambers, and changed surfaces encode past outcomes. These physical traces guide movement and behavior, preventing repeated exposure to risk. Learning becomes embedded in the environment itself, preserving experience across generations and improving safety without cognition. Reliance on diverse resources supports resilience during scarcity. When one food source declines, alternatives compensate. Exploration increases briefly during transition, then settles once new options succeed. This adaptability prevents collapse and reduces vulnerability to loss. Over time, varied intake stabilizes supply and supports endurance across fluctuating environments. Crowding influences behavior through subtle adjustments. High density promotes restraint, spacing, or gradual expansion to reduce congestion. Low density encourages consolidation to maintain cohesion. These responses prevent stress and inefficiency, allowing balance to emerge through local interaction rather than centralized assessment. Environmental filtering prevents constant reaction to minor disturbances. Low-level noise is ignored, conserving energy, while sustained or intense signals trigger change. This thresholding avoids wasteful response and preserves sensitivity to real threats. Over time, filtering refines responsiveness, improving efficiency and reducing disruption. Repeated movement alters surface properties, clearing debris and compacting material. These physical changes stabi. Repeated movement alters surface properties, clearing debris and compacting material. These physical changes stabilize routes, and reduce travel cost. Maintenance occurs automatically through use rather than dedicated effort. Over time, reliable corridors form that support efficient circulation without planning. Temporal flexibility reduces conflict with competitors. When overlap increases, activity may shift in time rather than space, preserving access while avoiding confrontation. This temporal partitioning supports coexistence without relocation. Adjustments emerge gradually, balancing opportunity and risk through timing rather than force. Internal redistribution of nourishment supports balance. Sharing ensures critical roles remain supplied even during scarcity. This buffering smooths fluctuations and prevents collapse of essential tasks. Internal flow stabilizes function across changing conditions. Moisture gradients guide movement and construction. Excess water triggers avoidance or reinforcement, while dryness encourages relocation toward humid zones. Structural changes follow repeated exposure, reshaping spaces to manage flow. These responses maintain internal balance and reduce risk of flooding or dehydration. Thermal buffering relies on depth and spacing. Movement follows temperature gradients, concentrating activity where conditions are optimal. Clustering conserves heat, while dispersal aids cooling. These responses maintain comfort and efficiency through local cues. Recovery after disturbance follows predictable stages. Stabilization precedes rebuilding, with effort avoiding damaged areas until conditions improve. This sequence prevents wasted energy and supports steady restoration. Responsiveness improves through repeated exposure. Overlap in skills ensures continuity after loss. Many individuals can perform similar roles, preventing bottlenecks. Redundancy supports rapid adjustment and recovery, making loss manageable rather than catastrophic. Natural decay of chemical cues prevents outdated guidance. Trails and signals fade, ensuring relevance to current conditions. This self-clearing mechanism maintains accuracy without effort, reducing confusion. Continuous interaction with surrounding life shapes ecosystems. Soil modification, nutrient redistribution, and plant interaction accumulate over time. These effects persist beyond individual lifespans, supporting broader ecological balance through repeated small actions. Long-term persistence arises from restraint, flexibility, and repetition working together. No single behavior guarantees success. Endurance emerges from many modest adjustments compounding across time. Through patience and feedback, systems remain functional across change, sustaining continuity without force or dominance. Movement within complex underground spaces depends on constant adjustment to pressure, texture, and resistance rather than fixed routes. As individuals pass through tunnels, subtle changes in soil firmness and wall shape influence future movement. Softer areas may be avoided over time, while firmer passages become preferred. This process gradually optimizes internal circulation without intention. When collapse or blockage occurs, pressure patterns shift, prompting redirection and slow rerouting. Over time, internal pathways reflect mechanical feedback from repeated movement. This allows efficient navigation even as structures age or change, supporting continuous flow without confusion or centralized control. Sensory awareness extends beyond chemical cues to include fine detection of pressure changes within shared spaces, shifts in airflow, vibration, or contact frequency signal movement elsewhere in the system. These cues provide early awareness of disturbance, congestion, or opportunity. Responses adjust locally, slowing or accelerating movement as needed. This distributed awareness prevents bottlenecks and reduces collision. Over long periods, sensitivity refines through exposure, improving discrimination between routine fluctuation and meaningful change. Such awareness supports smooth coordination across dense environments where vision offers little information. Adaptation to repeated disturbance improves recovery efficiency over time. When similar challenges occur again and again, response patterns adjust to reduce loss. Structural reinforcement increases in vulnerable areas. Movement avoids risky zones sooner, and rebuilding accelerates. These improvements are not remembered consciously, but emerge through altered behavior and structure. Each event leaves physical and behavioral traces that shape future response. Over time, systems become more resilient to familiar stressors, reducing impact and shortening recovery cycles. The balance between exploration and exploitation shifts dynamically based on environmental reliability. When conditions remain consistent, effort concentrates on proven routes and resources. When variability increases, exploratory behavior expands briefly. This balance prevents stagnation while avoiding unnecessary risk. Exploration rarely dominates for long. It subsides once success is found. This regulation conserves energy while preserving adaptability, allowing efficient response to novelty without abandoning stability. Social tolerance varies depending on context and density. Close proximity during rest or protection increases acceptance, while crowding during work encourages spacing. These shifts reduce friction and maintain comfort. Tolerance is not fixed. It responds to temperature, threat level, and task demand. Such flexibility prevents chronic stress and supports coordination within dense populations. Over time, adaptive tolerance improves efficiency by aligning interaction style with situational need. Material selection during construction reflects environmental feedback rather than preference. Particles that resist collapse or maintain moisture balance are reused more often, while unsuitable material is discarded. This selection emerges through repeated success rather than assessment. Over time, structures incorporate materials that perform well locally. This process adapts construction to specific conditions, improving durability and internal regulation without design. Collective response to novelty begins cautiously. New objects or changes trigger limited contact rather than immediate engagement. Exploration increases gradually as risk is assessed through repeated exposure. If no harm follows, interaction expands. If danger appears, avoidance strengthens. This incremental approach prevents sudden loss while allowing adaptation. Over time, novelty becomes incorporated into routine or excluded depending on outcome. Internal traffic flow adjusts to workload distribution. When demand increases in one area, movement patterns shift to supply it. Congestion triggers rerouting, while underused paths attract movement. These adjustments prevent delays and inefficiency. Flow remains balanced through local interaction rather than scheduling. Over time, circulation networks reflect demand patterns, maintaining efficiency despite fluctuation. Energy storage within bodies and spaces supports endurance during interruption. Reserves allow continued function when intake declines. Consumption slows automatically as availability drops, extending reserves. When intake resumes, replenishment occurs gradually. This buffering prevents collapse during short-term scarcity and reduces urgency-driven error. Over long periods, Effective storage improves survival odds during unpredictable conditions. Environmental heterogeneity encourages behavioral specialization. Slight differences in temperature, moisture, or structure lead to varied local routines. These micro-adaptations improve efficiency within specific zones. Over time, diversity in behavior across spaces enhances overall system performance. Local optimization supports global stability without requiring uniform behavior. Communication intensity scales with urgency. Low-level cues maintain routine coordination, while high-intensity signals trigger rapid collective response. This scaling prevents constant alarm while preserving responsiveness. Over time, sensitivity refines, improving discrimination. Efficient scaling supports calm operation, punctuated by decisive action when needed. Boundary maintenance occurs through repeated presence rather than fixed borders. Frequent activity reinforces certain areas as familiar, while absence weakens association. Boundaries shift gradually as movement patterns change. This fluidity prevents rigid conflict and allows coexistence. Over time, dynamic boundaries reduce energy loss from constant defense. Environmental gradients influence rest location as well as activity. Areas offering stable temperature or moisture attract stillness, supporting recovery. These preferences shift with conditions. Rest distribution balances recovery needs with availability of safe space. Such positioning supports endurance by reducing physiological strain. Collective problem-solving emerges through parallel trial rather than planning. Multiple alternatives are tested briefly, with success reinforced. Failure fades without cost. This parallelism accelerates adaptation while limiting risk. Over time, effective solutions spread through repetition, embedding improvement into routine. Interaction with seasonal plant cycles alters resource availability and shelter quality. Activity patterns adjust accordingly, increasing use of certain areas during growth periods and shifting away during dormancy. These adjustments align effort with opportunity, improving efficiency. Over time, synchronization with plant cycles supports stability. Environmental noise suppression prevents distraction. Constant low-level stimuli are filtered out, preserving focus on meaningful change. This filtering reduces energy loss and stress. Sensitivity remains available for significant signals. Over time, improved filtering enhances efficiency and calm operation. Structural aging influences movement and maintenance priorities. Older sections receive less traffic and gradually decay, while newer or reinforced areas dominate use. This turnover prevents accumulation of weak structures. Over time, internal architecture renews itself, maintaining safety and efficiency. Collective patience reduces error during uncertainty. Immediate reaction is avoided unless signals persist. This delay prevents overcorrection. When change proves real, response is decisive. Such patience balances caution with responsiveness, supporting endurance. Long-term stability results from alignment between behavior, structure, and environment. Continuous feedback keeps systems within functional limits. Through adjustment rather than force, continuity is preserved across change, allowing survival through balance, repetition, and restraint. Internal circulation of air plays a quiet but essential role in maintaining stable living conditions. As movement continues through passages and chambers, subtle pressure differences encourage airflow that refreshes internal spaces. This circulation helps regulate temperature, remove excess moisture, and disperse chemical signals evenly. Areas with better airflow tend to support longer periods of activity, while poorly ventilated spaces gradually lose use. Over time, structural adjustments reinforce beneficial airflow patterns, widening passages that move air effectively and allowing stagnant areas to close. This process occurs without awareness, guided only by repeated success. Through constant small movements, internal environments remain breathable and balanced, supporting long-term comfort and continuity even as external conditions fluctuate. Response to prolonged dryness requires careful redistribution of activity and space. As moisture declines, movement shifts toward deeper or shaded zones where humidity remains higher. Construction and repair focus on retaining moisture, narrowing openings that allow evaporation. Activity slows slightly to reduce water loss, conserving internal reserves. When dryness persists, behavioral restraint becomes more pronounced, prioritizing survival over expansion. Once moisture returns, activity increases gradually rather than abruptly, preventing destabilization. This measured response allows endurance through extended dry periods, supporting stability without panic or collapse. Surface texture influences navigation and efficiency more than visual landmarks. Differences in grain, resistance, and vibration provide constant feedback, guiding movement choices. Paths that feel stable and predictable attract repeated use, while unstable surfaces are avoided. Over time, favored routes become smoother and easier to traverse, reinforcing preference. This tactile feedback reduces error and energy expenditure. Even when chemical cues fade, surface familiarity supports orientation. Such reliance on texture allows reliable movement in darkness, supporting coordination across complex terrain. Periods of abundance encourage subtle expansion of routines rather than rapid growth. Increased resources lead to longer activity windows, improved maintenance, and gradual population increase. However, restraint remains present, preventing overextension. Storage increases alongside consumption, buffering future uncertainty. This balanced response avoids exhaustion and preserves flexibility. Over time, abundance strengthens resilience, rather than creating dependence, supporting sustained stability when conditions inevitably change. Interaction with gravity influences construction and movement patterns. Slopes affect how material settles, guiding placement choices. Steeper areas require reinforcement, while flatter zones support expansion. Movement adjusts to incline, favoring energy-efficient routes. Over time, structures reflect gravitational feedback, improving durability and reducing collapse risk. These adaptations emerge through repeated success rather than planning, aligning form with physical forces present in the environment. Gradual acclimation to local conditions improves tolerance. Repeated exposure to specific temperatures, moisture levels, or substrates refines behavioral response. Sensitivity adjusts, reducing stress from familiar conditions while preserving reaction to extremes. This acclimation spreads through repeated participation rather than instruction. Over time, local populations become well-suited to their immediate environment, improving survival without losing adaptability. Noise from external activity influences timing and positioning. Persistent vibration or disturbance encourages relocation to quieter zones, reducing stress and interruption. Activity may shift to different periods when disturbance is lower. These adjustments protect internal routines without direct confrontation. Over time, responsiveness to noise improves discrimination. ignoring harmless background while responding to genuine threat. Material decay contributes to renewal. As older structures weaken, traffic decreases and collapse occurs gradually. This natural turnover prevents accumulation of unsafe spaces. New construction emerges elsewhere, guided by current conditions. Renewal maintains safety and efficiency without requiring demolition. Over long periods, internal environments remain functional through continuous replacement rather than preservation. Social spacing adapts to task demand. Close proximity supports protection and warmth, while increased spacing reduces interference during movement or work. These shifts occur fluidly, responding to immediate context. Proper spacing reduces conflict and improves efficiency. Over time, sensitivity to spacing improves coordination across dense populations. Local scarcity encourages selective sharing rather than equal distribution. Critical roles receive priority, maintaining essential function. This targeted allocation prevents system failure during shortage. Once scarcity eases, distribution normalizes. Such prioritization emerges naturally through demand signals, preserving stability without conscious decision. Repeated exposure to mild stress strengthens response thresholds. Minor disturbances become less disruptive over time, while sensitivity to serious threats remains. This calibration prevents constant reaction and preserves energy. Over long spans, improved thresholding supports calm operation punctuated by effective response. Construction timing aligns with environmental windows. Repair and expansion concentrate during favorable conditions, slowing during extremes. This timing reduces risk and improves outcome. Gradual adjustment ensures continuity without abrupt change, supporting long-term stability. Internal diversity of behavior enhances problem-solving. Variation allows multiple approaches to coexist briefly. Successful strategies spread, while failures fade. This diversity accelerates adaptation without chaos. Over time, effective solutions embed into routine. Moisture retention strategies evolve with substrate type. Different materials require different handling to maintain balance. Through repetition, techniques refine, improving durability and comfort. Local adaptation supports stability across varied terrain. Energy conservation influences posture and movement. Reduced motion and strategic stillness preserve resources. These behaviors emerge automatically when return diminishes. Once return improves, activity resumes smoothly. Such pacing supports endurance across fluctuating conditions. Boundary perception adjusts with experience. Repeated safe passage increases tolerance, while negative encounters strengthen avoidance. Boundaries remain flexible, shifting gradually. This adaptability reduces unnecessary conflict. Nutrient cycling within spaces improves efficiency. Waste and debris enrich specific zones, supporting microbial activity. This cycling supports overall health and resource availability. Over time, internal ecosystems stabilize. Recovery speed improves with repetition. Familiar disturbances are managed more efficiently. Structural and behavioral adjustments reduce impact. Over time, resilience strengthens through accumulated experience. Environmental gradients guide both movement and rest. Preference for stable zones supports recovery. These gradients shift with conditions, and behavior follows. Such responsiveness preserves comfort. Long-term coordination relies on feedback rather than foresight. Continuous small adjustments keep systems within safe limits. Through restraint and repetition, stability emerges. Persistence across generations reflects alignment with environment rather than dominance. Survival depends on fitting conditions through gradual change. Balance, patience, and flexibility sustain continuity over time. Movement through long-established routes gradually reshapes internal geography, influencing how space is used and remembered through physical form rather than awareness. Repeated passage compacts soil, clears loose debris, and smooths uneven surfaces, making certain corridors easier and safer to traverse. Over time, these preferred paths attract more movement, while unstable or inefficient passages fall out of use and slowly collapse. This process simplifies navigation without planning, allowing circulation to remain efficient even as structures age. When disturbance alters the layout, new routes emerge through the same repetition and reinforcement. In this way, internal geography always reflects current conditions rather than original design, supporting continuity despite constant change. Tolerance to environmental fluctuation improves through gradual exposure rather than sudden adjustment. Repeated experience with local temperature ranges, humidity levels, and substrate types reduces stress responses to familiar conditions. Sensitivity narrows, conserving energy that would otherwise be spent reacting unnecessarily. At the same time, extremes still trigger protective behavior, preserving safety. This balance allows calm operation under normal conditions while maintaining responsiveness to danger. Across long periods, such acclimation aligns behavior closely with prevailing environments, improving efficiency and survival without sacrificing adaptability. Distribution of rest supports sustained productivity by allowing recovery without halting essential activity. Periods of stillness alternate naturally with movement, guided by environmental cues such as temperature and disturbance. Rest often occurs in zones offering stability and low vibration, reducing physical strain. Because rest is staggered across the population, core functions continue uninterrupted. During unfavorable conditions, stillness increases, conserving energy. This rhythm extends functional lifespan and supports endurance across long spans of continuous activity. Structural repair follows patterns shaped by exposure, traffic, and environmental stress. Areas experiencing frequent movement or pressure receive reinforcement, while low-use spaces are allowed to decay gradually. This selective maintenance focuses effort where benefit is greatest, avoiding unnecessary expenditure. Repairs adapt structures to present conditions rather than restoring previous form. Over time, this approach preserves safety and efficiency while allowing internal architecture to evolve alongside changing demands. Sensitivity to vibration provides early awareness in environments where vision offers little guidance. Movements through soil or vegetation generate signals that travel farther than chemical cues. Detection allows adjustment before direct contact, reducing collision and loss. Experience improves discrimination between routine background vibration and meaningful disturbance. This refined sensitivity supports coordination and safety, particularly in dense or enclosed spaces. Gradual redistribution of population maintains balance as space and resources fluctuate. When capacity tightens, growth slows naturally through reduced survival rather than sudden loss. When conditions improve, expansion resumes steadily. This continuous modulation prevents extremes such as overcrowding or collapse, preserving stability across changing conditions. response to persistent threat favors avoidance over confrontation. Movement patterns shift towards safer routes or times, reducing exposure. Engagement occurs only when benefit outweighs cost. Once threat diminishes, routines return gradually. This restraint conserves energy and reduces loss, supporting survival without escalation. Internal temperature gradients guide placement of tasks and rest. Activities requiring stability occur in zones with minimal fluctuation, while less sensitive work occupies variable areas. As external conditions change, placement shifts accordingly. Following gradients rather than fixed locations maintains efficiency and comfort. Material reuse improves efficiency by extending the usefulness of weakened or discarded structures. Components are repurposed when possible, reducing waste and conserving resources. This recycling emerges through repeated interaction rather than planning, supporting stability during scarcity. Coordination across large populations relies on local interaction rather than centralized awareness. Each individual responds to nearby cues, yet collective behavior remains coherent. This decentralization allows scaling without complexity, preventing bottlenecks, and maintaining order. Behavioral thresholds prevent excessive reaction to minor change. Low-level disturbance is ignored, conserving energy, while sustained signals prompt response. Sensitivity refines through exposure, maintaining calm operation punctuated by decisive adjustment. Timing of movement aligns with environmental cycles, such as temperature and moisture. Activity concentrates during favorable periods and retreats during extremes. This flexibility reduces stress and improves outcome without relocation. Internal diversity of response enhances adaptability. Multiple strategies coexist briefly, increasing the chance that one succeeds. Effective responses spread through repetition while failures fade. Diversity accelerates adaptation without chaos. Environmental imprinting shapes future behavior through altered structure rather than memory. Past disturbance leaves physical traces that guide avoidance or reinforcement, improving safety without cognition. Hydration balance influences movement, rest, and construction. Preference for suitable humidity prevents dehydration or flooding. Structural adjustments reinforce balance, supporting comfort and endurance. Energy allocation favors critical functions during stress. Non-essential activity declines, preserving capacity. When stress passes, effort redistributes smoothly, preventing collapse. Boundary flexibility reduces conflict. Areas of frequent interaction gain tolerance, while negative encounters strengthen avoidance. Gradual shifts balance access and safety. Microhabitat selection supports recovery by guiding rest and activity toward protected zones. Preferences adjust with conditions, reducing strain and extending endurance. Long-term coordination depends on feedback rather than foresight. Continuous small adjustments maintain balance across change, allowing stability without control. Persistence across generations depends on fitting the environment rather than dominating it. Gradual adjustment aligns behavior with conditions, allowing patience, flexibility, and balance to sustain continuity over time. Long-term stability within underground living spaces depends heavily on how pressure and weight are distributed across structures. Soil density, tunnel shape, and chamber placement all influence how force travels through the environment. Areas that experience constant pressure gradually compact, becoming stronger and more resistant to collapse. In contrast, sections exposed to uneven load or repeated disturbance weaken and are eventually abandoned. Movement patterns adapt accordingly, favoring routes that feel stable under repeated contact. This physical feedback loop ensures that circulation concentrates in safer areas without conscious assessment. Over time, internal architecture becomes a reflection of mechanical reliability rather than original layout. This process reduces catastrophic failure and supports continuous use even as materials age. By responding to pressure rather than design, living spaces remain functional across years of gradual change, maintaining safety and efficiency through constant subtle adjustment. Internal regulation of chemical signal concentration supports calm coordination across dense populations. Signals that guide movement, spacing, and interaction disperse through air and surfaces, and their concentration changes with activity level. In crowded conditions, dilution through airflow and movement prevents overwhelming intensity, reducing confusion. When activity slows, signals linger longer, maintaining coordination with minimal effort. This balance ensures that information remains clear without saturation. Over long periods, spaces adapt to support even distribution of signals, reinforcing paths and chambers that allow effective communication. Such regulation prevents chaos in high-density environments, maintaining smooth interaction through physical dispersion rather than control. This chemical equilibrium supports long-term stability by keeping coordination gentle, consistent, and responsive to current conditions. Adaptation to substrate variation plays a key role in successful expansion across different terrains. Soil composition, moisture retention, and particle size influence how movement and construction unfold. Softer substrates require frequent reinforcement, while denser ground supports more stable structures. Behavior adjusts through repeated interaction, favoring techniques that succeed locally. Over time, construction methods align closely with surrounding material properties, improving durability and comfort. These adjustments do not rely on memory, but emerge through feedback from success and failure. As environments change, techniques shift accordingly, allowing continued occupation across varied landscapes. This sensitivity to substrate ensures that living spaces remain functional and safe despite differences in terrain, supporting persistence across diverse regions. Population flow between internal zones supports balance by preventing stagnation or overload. Movement between chambers redistributes individuals in response to demand, congestion, or environmental stress. When certain areas become crowded, flow increases outward, easing pressure. When activity declines elsewhere, inward movement restores cohesion. These shifts occur gradually through local cues, such as contact frequency and chemical concentration. Over time, circulation patterns stabilize, supporting efficient task distribution without fixed assignments. This dynamic flow prevents exhaustion in high-demand zones and isolation in low-use areas. By continuously adjusting distribution, internal balance is preserved across changing conditions, allowing steady operation without bottlenecks or collapse. Environmental buffering within deeper chambers protects against rapid external change. Temperature, humidity, and vibration fluctuate far less at depth than near the surface. Movement naturally shifts downward during extremes, reducing stress and conserving energy. These deeper zones act as refuges during heat, cold, or disturbance. Over time, Activity patterns reinforce their importance, with sensitive tasks concentrated in stable areas. Structural reinforcement follows use, strengthening these buffers further. This layered protection allows continued function even when surface conditions become hostile. By relying on depth as a stabilizing factor, communities maintain continuity through unpredictable environmental cycles without constant adjustment. Incremental adjustment to repeated human disturbance improves long-term survival in altered environments. Vibration, noise, and structural disruption introduce unfamiliar stress. Initial response favors avoidance and reduced activity. Over repeated exposure, discrimination improves, allowing harmless patterns to be ignored while real threats still trigger response. Movement timing may shift to quieter periods, and internal positioning adapts to reduce exposure. These changes reduce energy loss and panic. Over time, resilience increases as routines adjust to persistent disturbance. This gradual adaptation supports coexistence with changing surroundings, preserving stability without requiring dominance or resistance. Division of space based on function supports efficiency and reduces conflict. Areas dedicated to rest, movement, storage, or care develop through repeated use rather than assignment. As activity concentrates, boundaries emerge naturally, guiding behavior without enforcement. Misuse declines as inefficiency becomes apparent through congestion or interference. Over time, spatial specialization improves flow and reduces disruption. These zones remain flexible, shifting as demand changes. This organization supports calm operation by aligning space with need, preventing chaos in dense environments. Through repeated interaction, internal order emerges that balances structure with adaptability. Long-term endurance benefits from gradual reduction of unnecessary complexity. Passages or chambers that no longer serve a purpose slowly degrade and are abandoned. This simplification reduces maintenance cost and minimizes risk. By allowing unused structures to disappear, focus remains on essential spaces. Over time, internal environments become streamlined, supporting efficient movement and reduced strain. This pruning process emerges naturally through disuse rather than decision. Simplification enhances safety and sustainability, allowing continued function without expansion beyond capacity. Physiological stress management depends on aligning activity with internal state. When energy reserves decline, sensitivity to work-related cues decreases, reducing participation. As reserves recover, engagement resumes. This automatic regulation prevents exhaustion and supports recovery without planning. Over time, alignment between capacity and effort improves efficiency. This self-regulation preserves long-term productivity by ensuring that work does not exceed sustainable limits. Calm pacing supports endurance across fluctuating conditions, maintaining continuity through balance rather than force. Persistence across long timescales depends on cumulative stability rather than rapid success. Small advantages compound gradually, shaping behavior, structure, and interaction. No single trait ensures survival. Instead, resilience emerges from many modest adjustments, reinforcing one another. Through patience, repetition, and feedback, systems remain functional despite constant change. This slow refinement allows continuity across generations, sustaining life through alignment with environment rather than control over it. Long-term navigation reliability depends on the gradual reinforcement of successful movement patterns rather than memorization of routes. As individuals repeatedly travel through certain passages, the physical environment changes in subtle but lasting ways. Soil becomes compacted, loose particles are cleared, and surfaces become smoother and easier to traverse. These changes reduce resistance and risk, encouraging future movement along the same paths. Over time, circulation concentrates naturally in the most reliable corridors, while less stable or inefficient routes are used less frequently and eventually disappear. This process allows navigation to remain accurate even when chemical cues fade or structures shift. When disturbances alter the layout, new routes form through the same repeated interaction. In this way, navigation adapts continuously, guided by physical feedback rather than planning, supporting efficient movement across complex and changing underground environments. Adaptation to long-term humidity patterns plays a crucial role in maintaining internal stability. Moisture affects structural integrity, movement efficiency, and physiological comfort. Behavior adjusts gradually in response to persistent humidity levels, favoring zones that balance moisture retention and ventilation. In damp conditions, activity shifts toward areas with better airflow to prevent excess condensation. In drier environments, deeper or more enclosed spaces gain importance for conserving moisture. Over time, construction techniques align with local humidity, reinforcing structures that resist collapse or desiccation. These adjustments occur through repeated success rather than assessment. By responding patiently to moisture trends, internal conditions remain within tolerable limits, reducing stress and supporting sustained activity even when external weather patterns fluctuate widely. Distribution of workload across time prevents exhaustion and preserves long-term productivity. Instead of continuous effort from all individuals, participation rises and falls in response to internal capacity and environmental return. Some remain active while others rest, creating a rolling pattern of contribution. This staggered engagement ensures that essential tasks continue without overburdening any single group. During unfavorable conditions, reduced participation conserves energy, while favorable periods see gradual increases in activity. This pacing allows recovery to occur naturally, extending functional lifespan. Over long spans, such moderation prevents collapse from overwork and supports steady operation through balance rather than urgency. Structural resilience improves through gradual reinforcement of frequently used spaces. Areas exposed to constant movement or pressure are strengthened through compaction and repair, while low-use sections weaken and fade. This selective reinforcement aligns durability with demand, reducing the chance of sudden collapse. When damage occurs, attention naturally shifts to restoring critical roots first. Over time, internal architecture becomes robust, where it matters most, supporting safety and efficiency. This process requires no blueprint. Resilience emerges through repeated interaction with the environment. Sensitivity to subtle environmental gradients supports fine-scale adjustment. Changes in temperature, airflow, and vibration guide positioning and movement without awareness. Activity gravitates toward zones, offering comfort and stability, while unfavorable areas lose use. These gradients shift with conditions, and behavior follows smoothly. Such responsiveness allows continuous optimization without drastic change, supporting calm operation across fluctuating environments. Gradual reduction of unused complexity enhances efficiency. Passages and chambers that no longer serve a function receive less traffic and slowly deteriorate, This natural pruning reduces maintenance demand and minimizes risk associated with weak structures. By allowing unnecessary spaces to disappear, focus remains on essential areas. Over time, internal environments become streamlined, supporting safe and efficient movement without expansion beyond capacity. Interaction with surrounding soil ecosystems influences long-term stability. Microbial activity affects decomposition, nutrient cycling, and structural integrity. Through movement and waste handling, microbial communities are shaped indirectly. Beneficial microbes flourish in certain zones, while harmful growth is limited through separation and airflow. Over time, these interactions support healthier internal conditions, reducing disease risk and improving durability of living spaces. Behavioral response to repeated low-level disturbance becomes increasingly refined. Minor vibrations or noises that prove harmless over time are gradually ignored, preventing constant disruption. At the same time, sensitivity to novel or intense signals remains intact. This calibration conserves energy and reduces stress. Through repeated exposure, discrimination improves, allowing calm operation punctuated by decisive response only when necessary. Allocation of space for recovery supports endurance. Rest tends to occur in areas offering stable temperature, low disturbance, and suitable humidity. These zones become associated with stillness and recovery, while more variable areas host active tasks. As conditions change, preferred rest zones shift accordingly. This spatial separation of rest and work reduces strain and supports sustained productivity across long periods. Persistence across generations relies on alignment with environmental constraints rather than domination of them. Gradual adjustment in behavior, structure, and timing allows continuous fit with changing conditions. Small improvements compound slowly, strengthening resilience without dramatic shifts. Through patience, repetition, and feedback, continuity is maintained, allowing survival across long timescales through balance rather than force. Gradual refinement of movement efficiency emerges from repeated interaction with the same terrain over long periods. As individuals traverse tunnels and surface routes again and again, subtle physical changes accumulate. Soil compacts, loose particles are displaced, and surfaces become smoother. These changes reduce resistance and lower the energy cost of travel. Over time, movement naturally concentrates along the most efficient routes, while less reliable paths receive less traffic and slowly disappear. This process does not rely on memory or planning. Instead, physical feedback from the environment guides circulation. When disruptions occur, such as collapses or flooding, new routes form through the same repeated reinforcement. This continuous reshaping ensures that navigation remains efficient and reliable, even as surroundings change, supporting steady activity across complex and shifting environments. Long-term moisture regulation depends on sensitivity to persistent humidity patterns rather than short-term fluctuation. When conditions remain damp for extended periods, activity shifts toward areas with better airflow to prevent excessive condensation. In contrast, prolonged dryness encourages movement toward deeper or more enclosed zones that retain moisture. Construction behavior also adjusts, favoring structures that balance retention and ventilation. These changes occur gradually through repeated success rather than conscious choice. Over time, internal environments stabilize within tolerable moisture ranges, reducing stress and preserving structural integrity. Such regulation supports sustained activity, even when external weather patterns vary widely, allowing continuity without constant reaction. Workload distribution across time plays a key role in preventing exhaustion and maintaining productivity. Instead of continuous effort from all members, participation rises and falls based on internal capacity and environmental return. Some remain active while others rest, creating a rolling pattern of contribution. This staggered engagement allows recovery without interrupting essential tasks. During unfavorable conditions, reduced participation conserves energy. When conditions improve, activity increases smoothly. This pacing extends functional lifespan and prevents collapse from overwork. Over long periods, such moderation supports steady operation through balance rather than urgency. Structural resilience improves through selective reinforcement of frequently used areas. Passages and chambers exposed to constant movement become compacted and strengthened, while low-use sections gradually weaken and are abandoned. This alignment of durability with demand reduces the risk of sudden collapse. When damage occurs, activity naturally focuses on restoring critical roots first. Over time, internal architecture becomes robust where it matters most. This resilience emerges through repeated interaction with the environment, maintaining safety and efficiency without deliberate design. Sensitivity to environmental gradients supports fine-scale adjustment without abrupt change. Subtle differences in temperature, airflow, or vibration guide positioning and movement. Activity gravitates toward zones offering stability and comfort, while unfavorable areas lose use. As conditions shift, these gradients change, and behavior follows smoothly. This responsiveness allows continuous optimization without disruption, maintaining calm operation across fluctuating environments. Gradual reduction of unused complexity enhances efficiency and safety. Passages or chambers that no longer serve a function receive less traffic and slowly deteriorate. This natural pruning reduces maintenance demands and minimizes risk associated with weak structures. By allowing unnecessary spaces to disappear, focus remains on essential areas. Over time, internal environments become streamlined, supporting efficient movement and reduced strain without expansion beyond capacity. Interaction with surrounding soil ecosystems influences long-term stability. Microbial activity affects decomposition, nutrient cycling, and structural strength. Through movement and waste handling, microbial communities are reshaped indirectly. Beneficial microbes thrive in certain zones, while harmful growth is limited through separation and airflow. Over time, these interactions support healthier internal conditions, reducing disease risk and improving durability of living spaces. This quiet partnership with microorganisms contributes to sustained stability without awareness. Behavioral response to repeated low-level disturbance becomes increasingly refined. Minor vibrations or noises that prove harmless over time are gradually ignored, preventing constant disruption. At the same time, sensitivity to novel or intense signals remains intact. This calibration conserves energy and reduces stress. Through repeated exposure, discrimination improves, allowing calm operation punctuated by decisive response only when necessary. Such refinement supports endurance in environments with persistent background disturbance. Allocation of space for recovery supports long-term endurance rest tends to occur in areas offering stable temperature, low disturbance, and suitable humidity. These zones become associated with stillness and recovery, while more variable areas host active tasks. As conditions change, preferred rest zones shift accordingly. This spatial separation of rest and work reduces strain, supports recovery, and maintains productivity across extended periods of activity. Persistence across generations depends on alignment with environmental constraints rather than domination of them. Gradual adjustment in behavior, structure, and timing allows continuous fit with changing conditions. Small improvements compound slowly, strengthening resilience without dramatic shifts. Through patience, repetition, and feedback, continuity is maintained. This slow refinement allows survival across long time scales through balance and adaptability rather than force or control. Long-term coordination within large populations depends on the ability to maintain stable interaction patterns without centralized control. Movement, spacing, and task focus emerge from countless local interactions that gently guide behavior. When density increases, spacing adjusts automatically to reduce interference. When density drops, interaction tightens to preserve cohesion. These shifts occur continuously, smoothing extremes and preventing sudden disorder. Over time, reliable interaction patterns become embedded in daily routine, allowing coordination to scale as populations grow or shrink. This decentralized organization avoids bottlenecks and single points of failure, supporting calm operation even in crowded conditions. Through repetition and feedback, coordination remains flexible yet stable, sustaining collective function across changing circumstances. Adaptation to temperature extremes relies on gradual behavioral adjustment rather than physiological change alone. When heat persists, activity shifts toward cooler hours or deeper zones where temperature fluctuates less. During prolonged cold, movement concentrates in more stable areas, and stillness increases to conserve energy. These adjustments occur through local cues such as contact frequency and environmental feedback. Over time, sensitivity to prevailing conditions improves, reducing unnecessary response while preserving protection against extremes. This measured adaptation allows continued function across seasons without exhausting energy reserves. Stability emerges from aligning activity with conditions rather than resisting them. Structural integrity is maintained through constant minor correction rather than major rebuilding. Small cracks, loose material, or weak sections are reinforced gradually through repeated contact and repair. Areas exposed to frequent stress become stronger over time, while rarely used sections are allowed to decay naturally. This approach prevents catastrophic failure by distributing maintenance efforts continuously. By focusing attention where demand is highest, internal environments remain safe and efficient. Over long periods, this steady upkeep preserves functionality despite aging materials and environmental stress. Response to resource unpredictability emphasizes flexibility rather than hoarding alone. When supply becomes irregular, exploration increases briefly to identify alternatives. Once new sources succeed, reliance shifts smoothly without disruption. Storage buffers short-term scarcity, but behavior adapts to longer trends. This balance prevents dependence on any single resource, reducing vulnerability. Over time, varied intake and adaptive response support resilience across fluctuating environments. Interaction with light gradients influences timing and positioning near entrances. Brighter conditions often coincide with higher temperature or exposure to predators, encouraging retreat. Dimmer periods promote movement and exchange. Sensitivity to contrast rather than detail guides these adjustments. Over time, timing aligns with safer conditions, reducing risk while preserving access to resources. This responsiveness supports efficiency without reliance on vision. Internal communication remains effective through modulation rather than intensity. Signals guiding movement or interaction scale with need, avoiding constant high-level stimulation. When activity increases, dispersion prevents saturation. When activity slows, lingering signals maintain coordination. This balance preserves clarity and calm, preventing confusion. Over time, communication remains reliable across varying density and activity levels. Gradual role transition supports longevity and stability. As individuals age or accumulate strain, participation shifts toward lower-risk tasks. This redistribution preserves experience while reducing sudden loss. Newer members gradually assume higher-risk roles. This progression balances productivity with preservation, supporting continuity across generations without abrupt change. Environmental noise filtering improves efficiency in disturbed settings. Persistent low-level vibration or sound is gradually ignored, preventing constant interruption. At the same time, novel or intense disturbance still triggers response. This discrimination conserves energy and reduces stress. Over time, calm operation becomes possible, even in noisy environments. Spatial separation of incompatible activities reduces conflict. Areas dedicated to movement, rest, storage, or care emerge through repeated use. Boundaries form naturally as inefficiency discourages overlap. These zones remain flexible, shifting as demand changes. Such organization supports smooth operation without enforcement. Long-term persistence reflects accumulation of small efficiencies rather than dramatic adaptation. Minor improvements in movement, spacing, timing, and response compound slowly. Through patience, repetition, and feedback, systems remain aligned with their environment. This steady refinement supports survival across extended timescales through balance rather than force. Long-term stability within mature communities depends on how movement, spacing, and interaction settle into predictable rhythms. Over extended periods, repeated local interactions smooth out extremes in behavior. Crowding leads to gentle redistribution rather than sudden conflict, while low density encourages closer coordination. These adjustments happen continuously, guided by contact frequency and environmental cues. As a result, collective behavior becomes calm and even-paced. Sudden shifts are rare because feedback dampens extremes before they escalate. Over time, these rhythms reduce stress and prevent breakdown, allowing large populations to function smoothly without centralized control. Stability is maintained not through rigidity, but through constant small corrections that keep activity aligned with conditions. Adaptation to seasonal cycles emerges gradually as timing and intensity of activity adjust to recurring patterns. Changes in temperature, moisture, and food availability influence when movement increases or slows. Rather than reacting sharply, behavior shifts smoothly as cues repeat year after year. Periods of abundance encourage longer activity windows and maintenance, while lean seasons promote restraint and conservation. This seasonal tuning prevents exhaustion and supports continuity across years. Over long spans, alignment with cycles reduces risk and improves efficiency, allowing survival without dramatic intervention. Structural aging plays a role in shaping internal environments. Materials weaken slowly over time, and areas showing early signs of decay receive less traffic. Movement naturally favors newer or reinforced spaces, while aging sections are abandoned gradually. This turnover prevents accumulation of unsafe structures. Renewal occurs as new roots and chambers form elsewhere, guided by current needs. Through this slow replacement, internal environments remain functional and safe despite constant material change. Response to chronic scarcity emphasizes careful allocations rather than collapse. When resources remain limited, non-essential activity declines, preserving energy for critical functions. Sharing becomes more selective, ensuring continuity of care and maintenance. Once conditions improve, expansion resumes gradually. This moderation avoids boom and bust cycles, supporting endurance through prolonged hardship. Interaction with soil chemistry influences long-term comfort and health. Mineral composition, acidity, and moisture retention affect structural stability and microbial growth. Through repeated movement and waste redistribution, local chemistry shifts subtly. These changes influence which areas remain favorable. Over time, behavior aligns, with zones offering better balance, supporting sustained occupation. Thermal inertia within deeper zones buffers rapid surface change. Heat and cold penetrate slowly, providing refuge during extremes. Activity migrates toward these stable areas as needed. This reliance on depth reduces stress and energy loss, supporting continuous function despite volatile conditions above. Gradual refinement of spacing behavior reduces conflict. Distance between individuals adjusts based on task and density, preventing interference. These patterns stabilize through repetition, improving efficiency. Over time, proper spacing becomes instinctive, supporting calm coordination. Noise adaptation allows coexistence with persistent disturbance. Background vibration is filtered out, while meaningful change remains detectable. This discrimination reduces stress and preserves focus. Calm operation becomes possible even in noisy environments. Energy budgeting aligns effort with return. Participation rises when reward justifies cost and falls when it does not. This automatic pacing prevents exhaustion. Over time, balance between effort and recovery supports longevity. Embedded physical cues guide future behavior. Altered surfaces, reinforced roots, and modified chambers encode past outcomes. This environmental memory improves safety and efficiency without cognition. Persistence across generations reflects accumulated balance rather than dominance. Through patience, flexibility, and repeated adjustment, continuity is maintained. Survival depends on fitting changing conditions through calm refinement, allowing endurance across long spans of time. As these quiet patterns repeat, life continues without urgency or force. Small adjustments accumulate, shaping stability across time. In this way, calm persistence carries these societies forward, moment by moment,